Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard of Article 13 and Article 11, which is the new restrictive policies that the EU is using in Europe. It's their new copyright law, and it's terrible. It's actually just terrible. It really is one of the worst things I've ever seen happen, and it's such a huge blow to anyone who enjoys the freedom of the internet. And we're going to be talking about that today. I'm going to be giving you guys details about what Article 13 is, what it means, and all of that stuff. I'm going to break this down for you guys as fast as possible and as concise as possible so that you guys can have the actual details of what Article 13 means and you can just have the knowledge of what you need to know about it. So, a dark day, a copyright law that threatens the internet as we know as it passes final EU vote. 2 years in the making, the legislation is intended to give copyright holders more control over their work, but critics say it could hand more power to tech giants, stifle the free flow of information, and kill our beloved memes. And it's not just the memes, it's free speech, it's the content that people create, it's news sources, it's everything that everything that we pretty much enjoy on the internet is going to be affected by this. European Parliament passed the copyright directive in a vote with 348 votes in favor, 274 against, and 36 abstentions. It's not about anything else besides wanting to have more control over people and have more power over people, control the narrative, and control what people are able to do and say on the internet. Because for the longest time now, people have been driven crazy by the fact that people on the internet can just say what they want and be who they are and all of that stuff, and they can't be controlled on the internet. And this is exactly what they will use to start to gain more power over people when it comes to people on the internet. So that's just kind of why this is all happening. But there's a lot of people that are now coming out and saying that they didn't understand exactly what they were voting for when they voted for this. I believe Sweden has come out and they said that the MEPs that they didn't know what they were doing when they voted for that. And it's just like, how can you not know? Like, did you not do any research at all before you voted for Article 13? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The whole situation is quite complicated, and we've covered it in further detail before, but the basic principles are fairly simple. Article 11, or what's come to known as the link tax, requires web platforms to obtain a license to link to or use snippets of news articles. This is intended to help news organizations gain some revenue from services like Google News that display a headline or a portion of an article that it suggests to readers. Article 13 requires a web platform to make their best efforts to obtain licenses to copyrighted material before it is uploaded to their platforms, and changes the current standard of requiring platforms to simply comply with copyright takedown requests. The expectation is that platforms will have to use imperfect upload filters to deal with the flood of user-generated content, and the most draconian moderation practices will become the new normal. We all know how well that system works, even at this point, and the way that it's working on YouTube and all that stuff. It's nowhere near perfect, that's for sure. The primary concern is that the legislation will do the exact opposite of what it's intended to do. Publishers will suffer as it becomes more difficult to share articles or discover news, and instead of paying for a license, companies like Google will just stop displaying news results as they've done when similar rules were tried in Spain. And honestly, that would not surprise me at all. MEP Julia Rita has been one of the most vocal critics of the directive and tweeted this morning that it's a dark day for internet freedom. Jimmy Wales, founder of Wikipedia, tweeted that the internet user lost a huge battle today in European Parliament. The free and open internet is being quickly handed over to corporate giants at the expense of ordinary people. Wales wrote, "This is not about helping artists, it is about empowering monopolistic practices." And I totally agree with you there, Jimmy Wales. And it's the crazy thing about this is that there's so many people that are speaking out against this. People that are those huge companies like Google, like YouTube, like Wikipedia. All of these companies are speaking out against this, and they don't want this to happen. There are so many companies that are speaking out against this, but the EU, despite all of that, despite all of the protests, despite everything, decided to put this into effect. For those who oppose the directive, there's a small bit of hope in the fact that each country in the EU now has 2 years to take the legislation and approve it before it is implemented in their country. But as the Electronic Frontier Foundation's Cory Doctorow has pointed out, there's also an issue. That's also an issue. The problem is that the EU-wide services will struggle to present different versions of their sites to people based on which country they're in, and so there's a good reason to believe that online services will converge on the most restrictive national implementation of the directive. And that's the whole thing. I mean, this thing is going to become such a huge mess. It's just going to become so chaotic, such a big mess. It's just like, I don't understand how they can even make this happen. Like, how are they even going to make this work unless they just completely just shut down anything that has any sort of copyrighted thing in it at all? Like, there's no way that this is going to work. It's just like, it's going to be such a mess. This legislation slipped under the radar for a long time, but now that it's gained so much attention, no one should think that the fight to make it better is over. So yeah, and then we're going to come over here to Arthur TV, who gave a really good breakdown about it, and he said, so Article 13 of the Copyright Directive has passed, and that's bad news for content creators and viewers around the world. Here's what you need to know. The directive was created by the EU to address unfair differences in revenues generated by creators and owners of content and the online platforms that host the content. The new copyright law was supported by many, particularly in the music industry. Makes sense. However, many believe Article 13 puts the creative economy of creators and artists around the world at risk. Article 13 makes the platforms legally responsible for all the content that they host. Under the article, Information Society service providers such as YouTube are required to use content recognition technologies to scan for images, videos, audio, and text content. However, content recognition and content blocking technology is often highly ineffective, overly broad, and counterproductive. The technology used today often blocks perfectly legal content and does not differentiate between fair use and copyright infringing activity. Given platforms are responsible for the content uploaded to their websites, they are likely to take extreme measures to make sure they are not allowing for copyright infringement. This means heavy filtering and strong restrictions on content. These practices are no doubt going to ignore limitations and exceptions to copyright and on fundamental freedoms of creators. Images, videos, audio, and other content that would otherwise be used perfectly legally for review, commentary, parody, news reporting, educational use, research, nonprofit, or personal use, which all of that falls under the fair use umbrella as we know at this time, will now almost certainly be blocked as a direct consequence of Article 13. Member states now have 2 years to implement the directive into domestic law. As the EU fight comes to an end, the national political fight over implementation and the legal fight begins. With regard to the UK, the directive is intended to regulate copyrighted content within the digital single market, so any effect on the UK will depend on the relationship between the UK and the EU, and thus the outcome of the Brexit negotiations. As of now, it's too soon to tell. It remains to be seen how huge the platforms like Google and YouTube will respond moving forward, but overall the directive fails to strike a fair balance between the rights of copyright owners and the rights and freedoms of creators that lead to content so many of us enjoy today. As we know at this point, Google and YouTube are not happy about Article 13 at all, but I mean, they're going to have to figure out some way to move forward with all of this, but we'll have to wait and see what they do with all of that. It's a dark day for internet freedom. It's about time the people in charge of governing and legislating on the internet actually understand it, and it's our responsibility to exercise our democratic rights to vote to ensure events like this never happen again. The final step is for the Council to adopt the law as well, which is likely to take place on April 9. The Council is made up of the heads of state of EU countries, the European Commission President Donald Tusk, and the High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. Between now and the decision of the Council, we need to be sure our heads of state know that we vehemently oppose this law, sign petitions, join the marches and protests, write to representatives, do whatever it takes to make your voices heard. Germany, whose Minister of Justice has come out in opposition to upload filters, could retract its support, which would make the necessary majority unlikely. If the Council fails to gather a majority to pass the law, this will lead to further negotiations on the directive. So whether they will have a say on Article 13 once again, or whether they will be voting on legislation in the future, make sure to vote in the 2019 European parliamentary elections from 23 to 26 of May for MEPs that will protect your rights and freedoms in this new technological era. So he gave a really good breakdown on all of this, and it really just comes down to the fact that these big companies and the government want to continue to try to control free speech more and more, and free speech is already so limited in Europe and all that stuff, but this is really going to just bring it to a whole new level. And this isn't going to just affect Europe, unfortunately. This is going to affect literally everyone that uses the internet, and it's going to affect content creators. It's going to affect anyone who enjoys the internet, and it's just not a good situation. This is not a good thing at all. More and more people are realizing this, and that's good. Hopefully there's something that can be done about it still. But who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, it's just not a good situation at all. So, for us Americans, it's really hard for us to really do much about it. But, we need to support the people who we know who are in Europe at this time, who are content creators. People like Wish Upon a Vlog, Julie, she's a huge part of our community and stuff. She needs our support, so go support Julie. And you know what? I'm going to actually just include her link down in the chat and the pin post and stuff and all of that. So make sure that you go check out her channel and subscribe to her, because she needs our support at this time. We need to continue to do what we can to support those types of people who are going to be directly affected by this, and that is our content creating friends who are in Europe at this time. Computing Forever is another guy who, I believe he's from Ireland as well, actually. So he's another guy that deserves our support. These are great people who are from Europe, who are part of our common sense community and stuff, and they need our support at this time. So anything we can do to support them, we will definitely try to make it happen. So yeah, it's crazy times that we live in, and it's just not good. It's just not good at all. So we need to just continue to be aware of this issue. I'm going to continue to cover this for you guys, and Jeremy will as well, and we'll continue to let you guys know about the details of what unfolds with Article 13. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you all very soon in another video. Talk to you later. Bye.